Breaking news as Home Depot issues a dire warning on the state of the economy and the state of the consumer. And so today, you guys, we're going to go into the exact warning and how that impacts you, as well as digging underneath the hood and looking at the bigger problem. And then after that, you guys, we're going to end this video talking about the solution and what you can do as a viewer just as soon as this video ends. And again, I have our community expert on all things economy. I have Mitch Vexler here. Mitch, how's everything going with the petition, the lawsuits, and the movement to battle corruption?
We're averaging on the petition almost 100 a day adding on since last Friday. So we're finally starting to gain a little bit of uptick. People are starting to get the message, and it's a complex issue, but they know that they have problems. They just can't articulate the problems. And as you're seeing through the videos that we're doing, more people are stepping up, and that's really what has to happen. And even today, you're going to see exactly why and how bad this is.
Now I will have a link to the petition and evidence packets on what's going on with the value corruption as we make our way through the story. So again, just go to my description. It's all there. But where we're going to start this video is by talking about Home Depot and what they said right before we recorded this video. Now, Mitch, the crazy thing is the market seems not to care at all about this warning. And so I want you to, give your opinions here, but let me read a little bit of this. Now, this just came out today. It came out this morning. Home Depot warns of sales profit decline on weak consumer spending. Home Depot warned of a decline in annual profit and a bigger drop in its annual comparable sales on Tuesday and here's the key, as weak discretionary spending dampened expectations of a recovery in consumer sentiment. I wonder if it's because of the inflation and the recession and things. Now, customers, this is what they're saying. Customers have delayed big projects, Mitch. They're saying this is why they're just delaying big projects like flooring, kitchen cabinets, as a result of high mortgage rates, and steep inflation. I really got to get your opinion here because this is what they're saying. Everyone's expecting rates are going to fall. So the consumers, are deferring those large projects. So they're basically saying, don't worry, they're going to come back. It's just pretty unaffordable right now. But when we dig under the hood, we see here Home Depot transaction volumes is the lowest it's been for a Q2 in at least 5 years, sitting at, and it's still a lot, 451 million transactions. So this is a really important indicator to watch because so many consumers across the nation shop there. So when consumer spending is dampened, Home Depot is usually the first to know about it. And being that it's a 5-year loan, we have more houses and apparently more income. That's a warning sign right there. That means it's not all rosy. Now, when we go on, and I'm going to get Mitch's last opinion here, comparable sales fell 3.3%. This is steeper than expectations of only a 1.98% decline. This is an indicator of traffic. All of these indicators, these transactions, this has slipped for the 13th straight quarter, Mitch. And the first thing I want to ask you to explain to the viewers, if you can, is what does that tell us about the consumer?
Okay, there's a fair amount to unpack here. Home Depot is the ultimate canary in the coal mine as far as discretionary expenditures. However, Home Depot has the ability to determine what is a household required expenditure versus, i.e. soap, detergents, things you would wash a house with, things you would cut the grass with, something that's a necessity versus something that's a non-necessity, i.e. lumber for expanding a deck. They have that ability to determine, and what they're telling you is that the amount of transactions based on the difference between those two elements, so it's a ratio if you want to break it down to math, and they can look at that ratio and say, yeah, in fact, our amount of sales are slowing down, and it's slowing down in discretionary items. So there's a lot to unpack there, but the people who are the founders at Home Depot are still heavily involved. That would be Bernie Marcus and Ken Langone. These guys have weathered multiple crises, economic storms. They won't shrink from a challenge. So anybody who says, well, Home Depot stock is going to go down, the market's going to do what the market is going to do. It's up, it's down. But one has to remember that there's trillions of dollars sloshing around in the market that would not have existed but for the nonsense from COVID. So if the market is up And I could make the argument that the market may very well hit an all-time high again. It'll do a double top, and then at that point it may crash. Nobody knows. But the point of the matter is you have to break in underneath the hood and really, really study why mom and pop are hurting. And as you're about to see in a few minutes, we have done just that. So don't conflate Home Depot stock with the idea that mom and pop are not hurting. Mom and pop are hurting. Home Depot stock may very well continue to run, but its sales revenue is clearly, they're telling you the sales revenue is in fact starting to diminish.
And yet the stock is still running. It's pretty crazy. Now, it's interesting because 70%, roughly 70% of GDP is from consumer spending. And it's also, depending on the data source, 70% of consumers are living paycheck to paycheck. What does that tell you about the spending problems in America? But the interesting thing is recently Home Depot actually is not, betting on the consumer. They're actually betting on a builder developer. Following the completion of the deal that they've made with the material supplier SRS Distribution in June, and this is for professional builders, roofers, landscapers, pool contractors, the company is expected to add $6.4 billion this year. Mitch, as a builder developer of I don't know how many decades, do you think that this is a good business decision of Home Depot? I mean, they're essentially betting that the housing market is going to continue to do well.
How much of that is internal hype, wishful thinking, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. The supply chain is so badly disrupted that if they don't put assets in these stores and they don't buy, then the supply chain gets even more disrupted. So how much of this is hype? It's not determinable at this point. The reality is it's all tied to interest rates. Should interest rates go down? Should interest rates go up? All of that is debatable. The problem is it all ends up at the tail end of the day with mom and pop. And we're going to see in a few minutes a chart that shows why this is going to blow to shreds and that this is not fixable. So if you look at something on a short-term basis, you can make the argument in either direction. If you look at something on a longer-term basis, I have a pretty interesting statement at the end of all this that simply the answer is devastation, and you'll see.
Okay, so in so many words, answer maybe no. Canary in the coal mine with Home Depot, obviously discretionary spending. But Mitch, it gets much, much worse when we actually look under the hood, and that's what we'll get into right now. And we look at the actual debt, the taxes, the financial burden on consumers. We start, at least I start to think that, man, we are living in a prison of sins from our forefathers. We're trapped in this burden. And so I want to direct the viewers to this article that you sent me yesterday. Zero Hedge stating that federal fiscal burden consumes, think about this, guys, 93% of America's wealth. That's based on data from the U.S. Treasury report. The federal government has amused $142 trillion in debts, liabilities, and unfunded obligations. We just made a video about this about 4 days ago. So for this report to come out, what timing? Listen to this part. The staggering figure equals 93% of all wealth Americans have accumulated since the nation's founding. Okay? 93% of the wealth from the inception of America. Let me read on a couple more things. Just as hard to stomach. The figure of 142 trillion applies strictly to Americans who are alive right now and includes the government's commercial assets. Thus, it quantifies the financial burden that today's Americans are leaving to their children and future generations. Mitch, if it wasn't for all of this, it seems to me that families, healthcare, the school systems would be flourishing. Absolutely flourishing, but there is a gross mismanagement of money. Let me keep going. Some of that financial burden that's hanging above Americans just as soon as they're born or as soon as they're 16, it just depends. In 2022, federal, state, and local governments spent $2.3 trillion on employee compensation, costing each household in the nation an average of $17,299. Why did that cost me that money? It gets much worse. And it's not even at this. When Mitch starts to talk, it's going to get even more worse. But listen, This is how bad things are, you guys, and how much things need to really change for us as Americans and families, husbands, wives, fathers, mothers. Social Security, the unfunded obligations amount to an additional, this is so hard for me to say because this sucks, $272,000 from every person who currently pays Social Security. And in addition to that, guys, Medicare's unfunded obligations amount to an additional $201,000 from every U.S. resident age 16 or older. While I appreciate the canary in the coal mine, it seems to me that at any given moment, we can look under the hood, multiple sectors in the economy, and we can see that the math doesn't add up, Mitch. We can see that this isn't fair. We can see that we're trapped. Can you tell us and try to explain what happened? How did we get trapped in this mess?
Well, we got trapped in this mess by multiple decades of fraud. In reality, spending without a budget and without a care to the budget, just figuring that you could turn the American taxpayer into your slave. And if you go and look at that spreadsheet that I sent you, and versus what we said a couple of days ago, when your liabilities are greater than your assets, by definition, you are bankrupt. Well, in the spreadsheet that I sent you, it shows what you just saw in Zero Hedge, but it adds on. So there's $142 trillion worth of debt created by the federal government. If all housing, all assets of all Americans is $152 trillion, you have to realize that it ends up in the current debt load being $268,000 as of today, $259 per taxpayer. But that doesn't include the unfunded problems, right? So in reality, you have a cumulative compounding effect of interest rates. The interest rates are such that literally in about 12 months, that 152,000 will be neck and neck with the 152 trillion will be neck and neck with 142 trillion. You see the problem? And that still doesn't include Social Security. In other words, your liabilities for the US government far outweigh the assets. And it is the compounding effect of interest rates that is the death nail. You know, compounding is the ninth wonder of the world. It's truly stunning what it can do. And that knife can cut both ways. It can be on the good side, it can be on the bad side. The problem is when the assets that are backing up this debt are virtually non-existent, and the idea that the government's got $5 trillion worth of governmental assets, extremely suspicious. Nobody's really broken it down. Nobody really knows what's inside Fort Knox, you know, what are the gold holdings, et cetera, et cetera. So it's hard to tell any of this stuff, but that doesn't really mean anything. The point of the matter is the liabilities are greater than the assets. It's a simple, easily proven statement. There's no way out. Then you add into that problem, who are the pension holders of these bonds at the school districts? Mom and pop. Who are the holders of the mortgages for multiple subdivisions, multiple houses? They're pensioners, right? Pension funds can invest in mortgages too. Who are the pension holders? Mom and pop. Who has the household mortgages? Mom and pop. No matter how you slice this, the liabilities on all these accounts that are in that spreadsheet are greater than the assets. And there is no way out. Compounding effect on interest rate literally means that the United States government and all these entities, including the CADs that are creating the fraud on mom and pop, are in fact bankrupt. I want to take it one step further. You have a budget on your house. And how can the government not have a budget and expect you to pay through the taking of your house their debts? And that's what that 142 trillion, 152 trillion are showing you. The only way for that $142 trillion to move is literally the theft of your house.
Mitch, when I added all that together, you know, the SSI, the Medicare, what you just went over, that's actually around, on average, $863,000 financial burden on the taxpayer.
Yes.
So my children are burdened with millions of my father's debt. And I say my father's just because that's when a lot of this problem happened. But, let's talk about the solution. And to add a little bit more, though, to the problem, you sent me this email. It's a huge reminder of they're still spending like crazy. So what Mitch is going over is underestimating. I mean, you guys remember there's $430 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act. So let's make more inflation, right? And $280 billion in the Chip and Science Act that was passed in 2022. It's getting worse. And Mitch, can you try to, this is very complex. Can you kind of try to articulate this and explain to the viewers, how's the taxpayer really on the hook for all of this?
Because there is no other asset, there's no other debt, there's no other asset that can be obtained other than the revenue from the taxpayers, just like you've seen in the CADs. Right? The CADs exist to take your money. They're lying about how they're valuing the property in order to take your money and give it off to the taxing entities, i.e. the school districts. The overall problem here, so your $860,000 per taxpayer would be correct. However, that's at a given point in time today. You have to remember there's something called the rule of seven. So in reality, the debt is going to grow double every 7 years, and they keep compounding it. So that interest rate on the debt is a cumulative, and that's why I keep saying it's cumulative compounding. You're neck and neck right now today, and therefore it's over. It's just a question of what is going to be the ultimate tipping point when a government defaults, and that will start this whole thing spinning out of control because they refuse to get in front of it.
Mitch, that sucks, Mitch. First of all, there's going to have to be pain to fix all this, but can you explain at least what you're doing? Obviously an entirely new system is needed, but can you just explain how there are powers in number, how you are trying to bring people together? Can you explain a little bit about your petition and about how people could end watching this video and do something about these burdens, these unfair burdens, by the way? What can you tell them about what you're doing now to change this?
The CADs, as in Denton Central Appraisal District, are committing fraud, and we have a mountain of evidence to back that statement up. We're getting calls from all across the United States from attorneys having the exact same problems. And that fraud causes monumental stress on people who know that they're getting screwed, but don't understand how bad it is. And that's the purpose of these videos, is to help anybody that we can help understand what's happening to them, make them realize what's going on around them, and give them an avenue to participate in a solution. The purpose of the petition is so that we can show the judges as we go through this process of laying out the case for fraud and laying out the case for constitutional violations of law, that there are in fact real people that are being hurt dramatically by the fraud that is taking place from these CADs. For the first time that we know of, and we've done the research, we have not seen anybody else that's been able to tie USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, to the math that's required under that document, to the Texas Property Tax Code, to the Texas Constitution, to the US Constitution. This is the first time that we know of this has ever happened. And the more people that know about this and the more people that get involved is the more strength that we have as a group, simply to point out this is what's happening. We know what's happening. We know who's responsible for making this happen. And eventually there will be an ultimate fix, which is bankruptcy for an awful lot of people. But that will have to start the clock going. And you get into some more complex issues having to do with currency, et cetera. But if you know what's happening, you can help guide your family to stay as far away from the trouble as you possibly can. And that is what these videos are really about.
The movement's been completely amazing, humbling, but the reality is we actually, sadly, we missed the window for protesting for the most part in 2024. And so, Mitch, the good thing is though, dude, we're going to take 2025 and all those protest windows, we're going to take that by storm. I mean, we're coming. We're going to come as an army. We're going to protest together. I plan on recording some of the ARBs. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to do what we can as citizens to help normal people. And I want to end here. I want to ask you this question, and I want you to really think about this, Mitch. With all the research and intelligence and everything you've been through, how much better off do you think families would be if it wasn't for all this fraud over taxation and corruption? How much more would we be thriving, really?
Well, if you use the rule of 7, the answer is double up, right? Just in 7 years alone. So if you're sitting there for 30, you're triple up on your assets, because instead of that money going to the governments in waste and fraud and corruption, it would be in your pocket. Then you could take that money, which is the way it's supposed to be, and invest it in items that you want to invest that money to ideally get an economic yield. You don't have that money because that money has been stolen from you via fraud.
So in other words, if I was 40 years old, I should have 4 times the amount of assets that I have right now. So
if you were 40 years old, give or take, you probably have about 5 times the amount of assets. But the point of the matter is, people that don't have at least 90 days of cash on hand for an emergency, that's unconscionable because things happen.
Yeah.
And
you know what? I'm starting to think that the Federal Reserve and these elites are just throwing canaries everywhere in these coal mines just so the birds start singing to distract us from what they're doing to us, which again, I should have 4 to 5 times. Who cares that, discretionary spending is down? We already know what's coming. We know what's coming because, again, the deficit spending, the debt burden, it's all fake. The propping up is imaginary.
All that's happened is they've taken, right, this is an x-axis and a y-axis. The government's getting bigger. The Federal Reserve should be chained. I mean, they should put chains on the doors going up like this. Your assets, your wealth is going down like this. They've already crossed each other as seen in that $142 trillion. This isn't repairable. All we can do is hunker down, understand what's going on, get involved, and hope that on the tail end, after all these bankruptcies occur, the sun will shine and then people will get busy and do what has to be done. But the idea that the government is a creator of jobs is, I don't know, lunacy. All they are is a creator of theft and fraud. And that is clearly seen and documented by the CADs creating fraudulent values. These things all have a nexus. The nexus is their ability to steal. And if the public doesn't know what's happening to them, that nexus isn't allowed to continue. And therein lies the problem.
In other words, you guys, stand up, join the fight, be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Simply signing up for the petition alone, it helps. It takes about 10 seconds. Don't forget, you guys, it is in my description. Big thank you to you, Mitch. You are an absolute hero and expert of the community. You guys show him some love. Comment below. Let him know what you've gained from him. Let us know if you like these types of videos. We wanted to be on top of it for you to make an evening video because this is breaking news. We know a lot of people are interested in what's going on in the front end with consumer spending. But the reality is, guys, is if we don't prepare, we're just dead man walking. Now, other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in real estate, you know that we wish you luck. And we hope you win.